Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the latest report from the Privileges Committee, at last, published this morning. I'd like to discuss the purpose of the special report into attacks by Boris Johnson's thugs and what the political implications may be. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So, in the wake of the Privileges Committee conclusion into Boris Johnson's contempt of Parliament, they followed up with a special report into some members of Parliament who had been attempting to influence the committee by whipping up outrage in both the media and within the Conservative Party. There were even threats to organise deselections for the Tory MPs, which formed the majority of the committee. The report, which I'll link below, explains what Erskine May definition of contempt of Parliament is. Erskine May, for those who don't know, is like the handbook, the book of rules and conventions which deals with parliamentary matters. And reading it and the statements made by 7 MPs and 3 peers, it's hard to see the attacks on the committee as anything other than a contempt of Parliament. In most cases, I would say, in most cases. You know, when I have a look at them, I would suggest, I know Mark Jenkinson has suggested that they're, going a bit much here. He has impugned the committee, but I would suggest that the claim against him would probably be the weakest. But the others have certainly attacked directly, explicitly, either the competence or the motivations of the committee. Several of the parliamentarians mentioned have done nothing less to accuse the committee of corruption. Nadine Dorries being, the jilted baroness, basically really laying it on very thick. The report also makes mention of the organised attacks on the committee at the party level from David Crudas's Conservative Democratic organisation. So in terms of what this means, first of all, I have seen some people saying that those named have been found guilty of contempt themselves. They haven't. The Privileges Committee they can't judge someone to be guilty of a contempt unless Parliament specifically asks them to investigate, as it did for Boris Johnson. And of course, there would be a right of reply and all the rest of it, as there was for Boris Johnson. So they haven't done that. They haven't said these people are guilty of a contempt. What this special report has, it was produced from the committee's own initiative. The wider House of Commons didn't ask for it. What they're doing is the committee are drawing attention to potential contempts of Parliament to their colleagues in the House of Commons and the House of Lords. And they're urging both of the houses to consider the implication of allowing members of their respective houses to be free to impugn the work of a committee appointed by Parliament. Because remember, the Privileges Committee wasn't just asked to investigate a contempt. Not a single MP objected, by the way, including the members who are now accusing it of corruption or incompetence. But every single member of the committee was appointed without objection from anyone, which means they had the confidence of absolutely every MP. They're sulking because they lost, not because they had any grievance. They had a grievance, they would have aired it much sooner on in the process. The committee is further essentially asking the House of Commons to basically order an investigation into the 7 MPs named. Now, I strongly suspect this is not going to happen. See, consider that this is the first time a Prime Minister has been found to be in contempt of Parliament for a reason. Boris Johnson is not the first Prime Minister to lie to Parliament, and yes, not all of the previous ones were necessarily Conservative Prime Ministers, yet Johnson is the first to have been found guilty of it. Why? Well, I could say it's because he's by far the worst, but it is much simpler than that. He was the only one whose lies upset the public so badly that his own MPs couldn't cover for him. When Keir Starmer, having trapped Johnson in the lies in the first place, presented a motion to Parliament to have the Privileges Committee investigate, Conservative MPs would ordinarily have voted it down all day, every day. There would have been no point in presenting the motion. But such was the public opinion on the matter, it would have been electoral suicide for Tory MPs to have done so at that time. They were still badly stung from having voted to disband the Standards Committee, about half a year earlier, well, a bit long, the previous year anyway. In order to, remember to stop, Boris Johnson ordered them to disband the Standards Committee to get Owen Paterson off the hook, another Tory MP. The public backlash to that was extraordinary, quite extraordinary, and hardly anyone even knew who Paterson was. No way the public would stand for letting Johnson off the hook. But I doubt it will be so difficult for Tory MPs to vote down any attempts to investigate the Johnson cultists. In theory, there might be a lot of Tory MPs who might not mind them getting their comeuppance, but I think pragmatism would suggest there's enough blue on blue action going on without having a whole string of Tory MPs being investigated for contempt and keeping the story going. The best solution would have been for Rishi Sunak to have removed the whip. He could have removed the whip. He didn't have to remove the whip from all of them. He could have removed the whip from like the first couple to put their head above the parapet. In particular, someone like Nadine Dorries, who wouldn't care anyway. But he didn't, because he's weak. The rest would have fallen into line. There's no way that any MP who still intends to fight the next election would have said anything. So he should have picked on those who aren't intending to fight their seats at the next election and clobber them. Basically, Nadine Dorries. But anyway, Labour can still use this. The committee recommends that the government present their motion to the House. They also suggest that if the government refused to do so, then after having given them a suitable period of time, any member of the House would be free to do so, which means that after summer, Keir Starmer might just do so. Or maybe Dawn Butler would like the honour, but I think it's more likely to be successful if the Leader of the Opposition does it. That being said, it may well be that Rishi Sunak agrees to present the motion, and quite quickly, to get it out of the way before summer. After all, this autumn's going to be very politically charged. There's an extent to which it always is, conference season, but if the Tories lose either of the safe Tory seats in the by-elections in a few weeks, this is going to overshadow everything. You know, if there is to be a divisive issue to deal with, best to get it out of the way quickly. In fact, that's why they want they didn't have to move the by-elections as quickly as they did. They wanted them this quickly. Mind you, I don't think Sunak's going to turn up to the debate and vote himself. As with the Boris Johnson report, he'll be found hiding under his desk and let Penny Mordaunt step up again. But he won't escape altogether. I wouldn't be surprised to see Starmer asking Sunak why he didn't discipline the MPs himself. After all, Starmer has form for disciplining Labour MPs who impugn uncomfortable reports, doesn't he? And if Sunak dodges the debate, he'll probably find himself facing the questions in PMQs. Because it's a sign of his weakness. And one of the two things, there's two lines that Labour have been using very successfully against Sunak. One, that he's out of touch, a line that Sunak does himself no favours with. And two, that he's weak. And this one is very much been weak. Like I keep saying, the Tories have spent the last 2 years thinking they just need to get through this little bit of political turbulence. They always think, we've got this trouble at the moment. Let's just put our heads down, get through it, and then, steady the ship ahead of the election. We just need to get through this bit now, get through this. It's not happening. They cannot even go a single week without some new scandal. And there's more to come. I can already see more choppy waters ahead for them, and there will be plenty I don't know about yet. It's been particularly noticeable for me these past few months. In fact, I'm having to change the way I plan out my schedule, honestly, because the way I used to do it, or the way I do it right now, but I'm changing it, doesn't work. With the absolute deluge of Tory sleaze and disasters hammering the news bulletins every few hours. While I'm recording this, something else has probably happened. The sorts of scandals which happen during a normal government, they happen once or twice a year. They're now weekly occurrences. Sometimes you'll get several in the same week or even the same day. It'll never end until they are banished to the opposition for long enough to reflect on their own self-destructive traits. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.